sponsors. The content of the following program, including all statements from the host and guests, is to provide general information and commentary about the law. Under no circumstances does any statement made by a host or guest to a caller or listener constitute legal advice or the formation of an attorney-client relationship, and the material from this program should not be viewed as a substitute for personal consultation with an attorney. Welcome to Talk Legal with Jeff Van Treese, who brings you all the latest news in the legal world. Jeff will be discussing a variety of legal topics with experts in the field. If you would like to ask a question or share a story on the air, please call toll-free 888-565-1470. Once again, that's 888-565-1470. Now, let's talk legal with Jeff Van Treese.
Good evening, South Florida. Welcome to Talk Legal, where we bring you all the latest news in the legal world. I'm your host, Jeff Van Treese. I'm an attorney with the law firm Oltmann, Flynn & Kubler, where we specialize in intellectual property law, including patents, trademarks, and copyrights, as well as elder law. You can check us out online and see all episodes of this show on our website at oltmannpatent.com. Once again, that's oltmanpatent.com. I'd also like to give a shout out to our other sponsor, Fresh Start Tax. Fresh Start Tax offers a full range of accounting services, including basic tax returns, as well as assistance with tax levies, wage garnishments, and any other tax-related concern. You can find out more by visiting them online at freshstarttax.com. I'd like to thank all of our listeners, both those of you tuning in to the radio, as well as those watching online. Today is Veterans Day, and I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank any of our listeners that have served in the armed forces, both past and present. We are truly grateful for your service. If anyone has a question, comment, or story that you'd like to share on the air, please feel free to call in toll-free at 888-565-1470. Once again, that number is 888-565-1470. We welcome your calls. I have a very special guest in studio this evening. My guest is Warren Redlich. He is a criminal defense attorney. He specializes in DUI defense, and he also practices personal injury law. Warren made headlines a few years ago when he ran for governor of New York as a candidate for the Libertarian Party. In addition, Warren is the creator and editor of the online news periodical West Boca News, which you can see at westbocanews.com, and I myself periodically contribute to that website. So Warren, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Just real quick, I do not, quote, specialize in criminal defense because in Florida to specialize you have to be, quote, board certified. So I focus on criminal defense as well as personal injury, but I'm not allowed to use the word specialize.
Thank you very much.
Even though I do an awful lot of it, and I think I'm really good at it.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So Warren, we're here tonight actually to discuss your book, Fair DUI, How to Stay Safe and Sane in a World Gone Mad. That is spelled MADD, a clear reference to the organization Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So in this book, you discuss a lot of things that you've learned in your experience as a DUI defense lawyer. What inspired you to write this book?
What inspired me is seeing lots of innocent drivers be convicted of DWI or DUI in Florida because they didn't know how to protect themselves from the dangers of a DUI stop. The reality is that it's not fair. The system is tilted against you, and I've seen plenty of innocent people plead guilty or otherwise be convicted of drunk driving, primarily because of the cost of defending a case is so high that people choose to take the easy way out, pay a little bit of what seems like a little bit of money and ends up being more than they think, and get the case over quickly. Even though they're innocent, they plead guilty. And people don't understand that innocent people plead guilty. When you look at the cost of fighting it, you understand, and the pressure that you feel. You understand why. And the point of the book and the point of, we have a flyer that I will talk about later, is to give people the tools so that they're able to handle that situation better, so that when they come to me, I'll be more ready to defend them and they'll be in a better position to defend themselves.
So the flyer is very interesting. I've actually never heard of this before, and it's something that you talk about in your book. And if you could tell us a little bit about this flyer and when you would use it.
Sure. The flyer, just to be clear, and my business card has the same 3 phrases on it as well on the back side. The first line says, "I remain silent." The second line says, "No searches." And the third line says, "I want my lawyer." These are assertions of your 5th, 4th, and 6th Amendment rights that you should assert in a traffic stop.
Just to clarify, these are things that you would recommend people write down on a piece of paper or a card or
Sure.
cardboard.
You can go to fairdui.org and you can download it. If you are in South Florida and you send an email to warren@redlicklaw.com or wredlick@gmail, whatever, you find my email and you send me an email, I will mail you. These are nice printed copies. I'll mail them to anybody in South Florida who asks for them. And the idea is you hold this up to your window when a police officer approaches your window, whether it's at a checkpoint or a traffic stop, and you hold it up and you don't roll down your window. This is very controversial. The ACLU tells people to roll down their window. But there's a reason why you don't roll down your window, and you don't have to roll down your window. You're not legally required to roll down your window, and people don't understand that. And unfortunately, police may not understand that. Prosecutors and judges may not understand that. But if you record the encounter with your cell phone, you put your cell phone on video and you record what's going on, and you show the cell phone this card and then hold it up to the window when the police officer approaches your window, the police officer is now in a difficult position, and this is the purpose of this card, is to put the police officer in a situation where it's not his normal way of dealing with things, and he has to make a decision. And most of the time, the police officer will either make a decision in your favor, like, okay, here's your ticket, or move along. By the way, it says to put any tickets under the windshield wiper. It gives the police officer an instruction as to how they can give you your ticket without you having to roll down your window to accept it. So the police officer, if he does what he should do under the law, he should just put your ticket under the windshield wiper and let you drive off. If the police officer decides to force you to roll down your window one way or another, and the video shows that you didn't consent to rolling down the window, you now have a 4th Amendment violation. And I have a way of getting your case dismissed, because the police officer should not have forced you to roll down your window. That's the idea.
So just to clarify, the 4th Amendment is the protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. And if you say that if you communicate to the police officer that you do not want to roll down your window and he tells you to, then that 4th Amendment right potentially has been violated.
Well, very clearly, you've told the police officer by holding up a card that says no searches.
Right.
Okay, and I think a lot of people would hear this and say, well, that's not a search. Well, sure it is, because the minute you roll down your window, the police officer is going to say, I smelled alcohol. I've had plenty of cases where there was actually no alcohol involved, and the police claimed they smelled alcohol. So I'm sorry, I have a lot of friends who are cops. There are a lot of good cops out there, but the guy who pulls you over might not be one of them. And if you encounter a bad cop, you want to protect yourself. If you encounter a good cop's not going to abuse you. Unfortunately, we live in South Florida. We see stories all the time. There are bad cops out there, and you need to protect yourself from them. So it is a search when he forces you to roll down your window. And there's some Supreme Court cases. I could get into detail on Supreme Court cases, but the essential case that motivates that is there was a case where the Supreme Court said it was okay for police to have a dog sniff around the outside of a car, not sniff inside the car. They said that the dog could sniff around the outside of the car, and that was to detect drugs, and to hold you in a traffic stop for a period of time so a dog could sniff around the car. The Supreme Court said that was okay. They didn't say they could make you roll down the window and let Sparky sniff on the inside of the car.
Right.
They only said you could sniff around the outside of the car. So the police officer saying he wants to smell inside your car, he may not have as good a nose as the dog, but he still doesn't get to sniff inside the car.
Right. And you would recommend that people use this flyer for any instance where you're pulled over, not necessarily for DUI, but for speeding or anything,
Well,
right?
You don't know whether it's for DUI when you get pulled over.
Right.
I recommend, the thing is, first of all, for who should use it? It's not for everybody. You have to be prepared to have that confrontation with the police officer's not going to like it, right? A lot of people are not comfortable taking what most people would consider an aggressive position with a police officer. And you have to be comfortable. I've done it myself. I did it in a checkpoint in Miami. If you go to the Fair DUI website, fairdui.org, or just Google Fair DUI Miami checkpoint, I went through and I did it myself at a checkpoint, and the police officer waved us on. They did not force us to roll down the window. They didn't do anything. So it works, and we've done it several times in checkpoints. I've never yet seen it used in a traffic stop where you're pulled over for speeding or something else, but I've seen it used multiple times in checkpoints, and it has always worked when it has been used in a checkpoint that I'm aware of. And this is important because you want to protect yourself from police abuse. That's the idea. You're protecting yourself from the bad cops. You can't know whether the guy who pulled you over is a good cop or a bad cop, and you're protecting yourself from the bad cops.
Right. So when we talk about the field sobriety test, in the event that you do have to confront the police officer and they ask you to take these tests, what is your general advice to someone that's in that position?
Sure, I talk about this in the book, and let me just for the listeners make it clear. What happens in a police traffic stop where it becomes a DUI stop is after they've pulled you over, they force you or ask you to step out of the car. If you step out of the car, whether it's forcible or not, they're going to ask you to perform certain, in Florida we call them exercises in court. We don't call them tests. They're called tests nationwide, but in Florida the courts are not very fond of them, so we call them exercises. The police officer will ask you to walk a line, an imaginary line, but a line. He'll ask you to stand on one leg. He'll ask you to watch him as he moves his finger across your face, watch how your eyes move. And these tests are junk. It's junk science. I don't even want to call it junk science because I think it's an insult to junk science. If you get into how these tests are done, how they're the so-called science behind them, just total junk. They're unreliable, and as a lawyer, I advise my clients, do not participate in them. They are not reliable, and it can be used against you that you refuse to perform these exercises. And you have a very simple answer when you're in front of a jury. You say, my lawyer told me not to do those exercises. He said they weren't reliable. I listened to my lawyer's advice and I did what he said.
So if we talk about some of the tests, also you mentioned the nystagmus test, which is where a police officer holds up a flashlight to your eye and he looks at your eye movement. Now, from what I read in your book, which I find very interesting, the officer is asked to look for significant and sustained nystagmus.
Yeah, let's just explain. Nystagmus is when your eyeball jitters or wiggles. When an eyeball that would normally be steady flutters. The ball itself, not the eyelid, that the eyeball itself, jumps up and down. And I have a friend who's an ophthalmologist, and he just laughed at the idea that a police officer with a couple weeks training, or 1 week of training, is able to diagnose something about someone's eyes when an ophthalmologist would tell you any number of conditions, any number of things can cause that. And is a police officer really qualified to determine whether it's there?
Well, not only to diagnose it, but the police officer is supposed to tell the difference between normal movement and sustained and significant nystagmus, or the movement being abnormal.
That's a particular. There's two things. They're supposed to look for whether it starts. They're moving their hand and getting your eye to the point where it's goes past 45 degrees, and then in another test they're moving it to what's called maximum deviation, as far as your eyeball can go. So in the 45-degree test, what's called the angle of onset test, they're supposed to look for whether the eye starts bouncing before it gets to 45 degrees. Well, how are they measuring 45 degrees? And that's total junk. They have no way of measuring 45 degrees.
Unless they have a protractor.
Unless they have a protractor, they stick it under your chin, and even then, and you talk to an ophthalmologist about this test, and they're like, it's nonsense. And then the other test, what you're referring to, is at maximum deviation. They're supposed to distinguish a normal, healthy, unimpaired eye will exhibit nystagmus at maximum deviation. When you hold your eye all the way out, the training that the police officers have is that it's normal to have nystagmus, some nystagmus, when it's at maximum deviation. The question that the police officer is supposed to look for is whether it's distinct and sustained nystagmus. And I have questioned dozens of police officers, and I think only one of them has gotten it right, that he observed distinct and sustained nystagmus at maximum deviation instead of regular nystagmus. And they're trained that regular nystagmus is an indication of sobriety. And yet they still arrest people because they don't pay attention to how they're supposed to perform these exercises.
So the moral of the story is, of course, that sober people can and do fail these tests all the time, right?
They're designed to fail, as defense lawyers would say. They're designed to fail. You ask yourself, could you stand on the easiest one to understand is the one-leg stand test. Would you be able to stand for 30 seconds on one leg without moving your arms?
Not likely. Even if you're a
some people
circus
can.
performer, right?
I do Tai Chi. I genuinely believe that I could do the one-leg stand test drunk. I could do the one leg stand test without a problem because I train in Tai Chi and I know how to do that particular. We work on our balance all the time. But most people cannot stand on one leg without moving their arms. And because that's normal. It's normal to move your arms to balance yourself when you're doing that test or exercise. So that's a good example of it. Another one we mentioned before, the invisible line, what's called the walk and turn test. And the police officer, one of the things he looks for is whether you step off the line. It's an invisible line. It's an imaginary. How does he know where you imagine the line is?
And you don't know how wide the line is. If it's a foot long, then it would be much more meaningful, but it could be 6 inches long, and how wide the line is totally in the officer's imagination,
So
which you have
again-
no way of knowing, right?
Again, this is about protecting yourself from the bad cops. There are good cops out there who will do everything right, and I still don't think they're qualified to perform these tests. But the bad cop doesn't care how you actually perform the test, and he uses the test as he checks off that you failed, and he arrests you. And there's video. Can you really tell in the video how the guy performed? The video can't see how your eyeball moved. The video can't see whether you stepped off an imaginary line, because it's an imaginary line. The police officer says, I thought he stepped off the line. You're done.
So this is all very unnerving. We're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be back with Warren.
This program is brought to you by Fresh Start Tax. Fresh Start Tax offers a full range of tax
looks like
and
we're
accounting
not going to
services,
break, which is
including
actually-
tax return preparation and bookkeeping, as well as back taxes, wage garnishments, unfiled returns, or any other tax-related concern. Our dedicated team of tax attorneys, CPAs, and former IRS agents
How's that-
offer
how's the
over
sound
60
quality?
years of professional
Good.
tax experience. For a free consultation, call 866-700-1040. That's 866-700-1040. You can also visit us on the web at freshstarttax.com. This program is brought to you by the law firm of Altman, Flynn, and Kubler. Our law firm specializes in elder law and intellectual property, including patents, trademarks, and copyrights. If you would like to patent your idea, please contact our Fort Lauderdale office for a free consultation. We offer elder law services, including estate planning, long-term care planning, and preparation of healthcare documents. We strive to plan for your future needs while allowing you to retain as much dignity and independence as possible. To find out more or to make an appointment, call 954-563-4814. That's 954-563-4814. Or visit us online at altmanpatent.com. That's OLTMANPATENT.com. Spokesperson, not an attorney. Mic's open.
And we're back. My guest, this is Jeff Trees with Talk Legal. My guest this evening is Warren Redlich. He's the author of the book Fair DUI, How to Stay Safe and Sane in a World Gone Mad. So Warren, where can people find this book?
Sure. The book is on Amazon. On Kindle, it's 99 cents. And on paperback, Amazon is currently discounting it to under $5. And then the other thing is the flyer. You can get that on fairdui.org. Just Google Fair DUI flyer and you'll find it. This flyer that I'm holding right now is Florida specific. We have flyers for several other states, but we don't have every state. We have New York, for example, California. We have quite a few other states, but maybe we have 10 or 15 states. We don't have 50. So if there's not one for your state, good luck. We'll get to it someday.
Right. Well, I've read this book cover to cover. I found it very interesting, both from a lawyer's perspective, but it would also be a great read for a layperson as well. It just has a lot of really great practical information. So we saw in the news recently John Goodman was convicted of DUI and DUI manslaughter, actually, and leaving the scene of an accident. So, of course, one of the things that it's definitely worth mentioning is that it's very important that if there's any bodies at the scene or if anyone's injured, that you do not leave under any circumstances.
Just from a moral perspective, you shouldn't leave the scene of an accident. And obviously, from a legal perspective, you shouldn't leave the scene of the accident. From a practical standpoint, I think his leaving the scene of the accident hurt him. It was not the right decision. I mean, just from whether you're going to get convicted or not, leaving the scene did not help Mr. Goodman. That was not the right decision to make. There are much better ways to protect yourself. That's a bad way of handling it.
And with the breathalyzer tests, what is your perspective on whether to blow or not? Your book talks about the pros and cons of that scenario, of that situation. If you want
Sure.
to discuss
Let me just clarify, because number one, the word breathalyzer is not really used. The device known as the breathalyzer is not really used anymore. There are other devices made by other companies. Most commonly, one is called the Data Master or the Draeger. There's a bunch of them that different police agencies use. But there's an important distinction to make. There's one a handheld device that's commonly called an Alka sensor or a portable breath screen that is used at the side of the road while you're having your encounter with the police. And that one is actually one that it's okay. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't blow in it, but if you're ever going to blow, that's the one you should blow in, because they can't use the result against you in your trial. But if you if you genuinely believe you're sober and you haven't had alcohol to drink, you've had very little alcohol to drink, that one is safe to blow in, because if it's a bad result, we can deal with it. But if it's a good result, the police officer might decide, hey, he blew a low number, I'm going to let him go. So that's a good place to deal with it. But the what's known as the breathalyzer, or commonly referred to as a breathalyzer, people don't realize there's two different types of devices. When you're arrested and you're taken to the police station, they bring you into a room with a device that is not handheld. It's generally it's not a big, huge box, but it's larger than something you'd hold by hand. And they have you blow on that machine. And those devices, in my opinion, are highly unreliable. And you should, and that result, if it whatever comes up, can and it likely will be used against you in a trial. In my opinion, in general, you are better off not blowing in that device. There's always exceptions, and the particular example we talked about, if there's bodies at the scene, if you were in an accident and someone was injured, the stakes of there's a consequence when you don't blow in that machine. You may lose your license, but you're going to lose your license anyway. Okay,
Right.
So there's a good chance you're going to lose your license anyway. And the consequences of the criminal case are much more serious than the consequences of losing your license. So when there are big stakes at play, you definitely do not want to contribute. You don't want to help them convict you.
Even if you're sober.
Even if you're sober. Well, and this is one of the things that really gets me that I've learned in Florida that is not true in upstate New York where I'm from. If you're stopped by a police officer and he decides to take you to the station, and I would ask people to think about this. They take you to that machine and you blow willingly, and you blow a low number. You blow 0.00, 0.02, a number that's well within the legal limits. Ask yourself, what do you think the police should do when you blow a legal number? And I can tell you, in upstate New York, when you blow a low number, the police take you back to your car, say have a nice day, apologize if they've interfered. They give you your tickets, whatever they pulled you over for. But generally speaking, if you blow a low number, you're free to go. You're not charged with DUI or DWI in New York. In Florida, at least in Palm Beach County, and my understanding from talking with other DUI lawyers, this is common all over the state. You could blow a 0.00, and they will still charge you with DUI. Your mugshot will still go up on the Sun Sentinel, the Palm Beach Post, and possibly on West Boca News, mugshots.com, jailhub.com. You will still be held for 8 hours. You're still going to be charged with a DUI even when you blow a low number. And I don't think people recognize how insane that is. Or people just aren't even aware that it happens. That's wrong. If the police officer thought you were drunk on alcohol, and by the way, they will testify. If you blow a high number, they will have witnesses who will testify. This is a highly reliable scientific instrument. They'll use that language. A highly reliable scientific instrument. But it's only reliable when you blow a high number. If you blow a low number, they claim it's then it must be something else. Well, wait a minute. If you thought he was impaired by alcohol because you smelled alcohol, and he told you he had a couple drinks, and you take him to the police station, you have him blow in the machine, and then he blows a low number, you're done. Let him go. You were wrong. He wasn't drunk. But instead, they're like, well, I still think he's... All of a sudden, the machine is now unreliable. It's this bizarro world, and people don't understand the bizarro world of criminal defense.
Wow. So you're also quite critical of the organization MAD in your book. And I found it interesting that the founder of MAD actually left the organization because it became an organization that its focus, which originally was to prevent drunk driving with people that were dangerous, that could kill people, and it's now become more of a prohibitionist agenda. Is that what you found?
Yeah, well, I haven't focused a lot on MAD. I used MAD in the title because I thought it sounded like a cute title. Stay safe and sane in a world gone mad. I thought that was a cute title. But I did research Mothers Against Drunk Driving to an extent. And I think that's another thing that people don't understand about the system. Mothers Against Drunk Driving makes money off our DUI laws. There are Mothers Against Drunk Driving chapters all over the place. And when somebody gets arrested for DUI and they have to go through this process, part of the process is they have to attend a victim impact panel, which is run by MAD, and MAD gets paid. They are a special interest. They may be well-meaning. The people involved with it may be well-meaning people, but they are in it. Ultimately, the organization, not necessarily the individuals who support MAD, but the organization is motivated by the wrong reasons and pursuing the wrong agenda.
Very interesting. So we are running out of time. Warren, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of your insight. If you could tell our listeners how you could be reached in the event they are in the unfortunate position of needing your services.
888-RED-LAWYER.
888-RED-LAWYER.
888-RED-LAWYER. The website is fairdui.org. Westboca News, if they want to read what's going on in Westboca. But easiest way to reach me, 888-RED-LAWYER. REDLAWYER. It's 888-733-5299.
Great. And again, check out westbocanews.com. In this book, Fair DUI, again, that's on Amazon, and you can get it on Kindle, both in hard copy as well as electronic.
99 cents on Kindle. You can't beat that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Please join us next week, Tuesday night from 6 to 6:30, where we'll be discussing elder law with attorney Howie Crooks. If you have any questions, please have them ready. We'll be taking your calls. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you for listening to Talk Legal with Jeff Van Treese. Tune in next week for more insightful and exciting information about the law. You can contact Jeff by email at jvt2law@gmail.com or give him a call at 561-789-6866. That's 561-789-6866. The content of the preceding program, including all statements from the host and guests, is to provide general information and commentary about the law. Under no circumstances does any statement made by a host or guest to a caller or listener constitute legal advice or the formation of an attorney-client relationship, and the material of this program should not be viewed as a substitute for personal consultation with an attorney. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. This program is brought to you by Fresh Start Tax. Fresh Start Tax offers a full range of tax and accounting services, including tax return preparation and bookkeeping, as well as back taxes, wage garnishments, unfiled returns, or any other tax-related concern. Our dedicated team of tax attorneys, CPAs, and former IRS agents offer over 60 years of professional tax experience. For a free consultation, call 866-700-1040. That's 866-700-1040. You can also visit us on the web at freshstarttax.com. This program is brought to you by the law firm of Altman, Flynn, and Kubler. Our law firm specializes in elder law and intellectual property, including patents, trademarks, and copyrights. If you would like to patent your idea, please contact our Fort Lauderdale office for a free consultation. We offer elder law services, including estate planning, long-term care planning, and preparation of healthcare documents. We strive to plan for your future needs while allowing you to retain as much dignity and independence as possible. To find out more or to make an appointment, call 954-563-4814. That's 954-563-4814. Or visit us online at altmanpatent.com. That's OLTMANPATENT.com. Spokesperson, not an attorney.